Have you ever quietly wondered why your children or grandchildren call less than they used to? Why your neighbors just give a quick hello, then hurry on their way? Or why family gatherings, though still attended, no longer feel as warm or connected as they once did? If that sadness has touched you before, then please know you're not alone. Many older adults across America feel this same quiet ache. It doesn't get spoken out loud. It doesn't come with drama or confrontation, but deep inside, there's a question that lingers. Does my presence still matter to anyone? The truth is, it's not that others no longer love us. It's not that we've done something terribly wrong. Sometimes, without meaning to, we develop certain habits over time, quiet patterns of behavior that slowly make it harder for people to feel close to us. The good news is, these habits can be noticed. And once we do, they can be gently shifted, not with force, not with guilt, but with the same kind of care we once gave to others. We don't need to change everything overnight. Just a few small adjustments, done with honesty and warmth, can be enough to bring people closer again. So in today's video, I'd like to invite you to sit with me as we reflect on 13 habits in old age. Habits that may seem harmless to us, but that over time might be quietly pushing our loved ones further away. If you're ready, let's begin this journey together. With gentleness and just enough courage to look inward, one honest step at a time. Sometimes in the quiet flow of everyday conversations, the first thing that leaves our lips is a heavy sigh. Growing older brings many changes. The body slows down, the mind feels a little less sharp, and the world around us, from prices and services to technology, and the way young people speak and think, can start to feel strangely unfamiliar. It's no wonder that over time, complaining becomes a habit, a way to release frustration, a way to say, I'm still here. I still have something to say. But what we don't always notice is how the people we speak to, even those who love us dearly, also carry their own weariness. They sit with us, nodding politely, but their eyes begin to drift. Not because they don't care, but because they simply don't know how to help. And so, little by little, the distance grows. A missed phone call, a delayed visit. What used to be warm connection starts to feel more like obligation. I understand some days really do feel heavy, but even on those days, there are still quiet, gentle moments, a bit of sunlight through the curtain, a warm cup of tea, the sound of a bird in the morning air. If we could choose how to begin a conversation, why not start with one of those small, gentle things? Because the energy we bring into the room often shapes the entire experience. A kind memory, a soft laugh, even just a smile can carry more weight than we think. If you're still with me now, let me ask you, when was the last time you shared a story that made someone smile? You can write it in the comments, or simply call it to mind quietly. Either way, it may ease something inside you. And if you're still listening, let's take one more step together towards something else just as familiar, yet often just as quietly harmful to the ones who want to be near us. Some conversations begin gently enough, but before long, they drift into a list of medications, test results, and lingering aches that just won't go away. And I understand it's real. It's the truth of our daily lives at this stage. At a certain age, nearly all of us are carrying some kind of health issue. Headaches, back pain, heart problems, blood pressure. None of it feels unusual anymore. In fact, it can start to feel like our bodies are no longer fully ours, like they've become strangers that no longer follow our lead. But here's something we don't always notice. When our stories revolve only around sickness, they don't just weigh down the atmosphere, they can leave the person we're talking to feeling helpless. They don't know what to say, they don't know how to respond. And slowly, visits that used to feel warm and easy become a bit tense, as if each meeting comes with a new list of worries they weren't prepared for. There's nothing wrong with sharing your struggles. In fact, naming our pain is a way of being seen and understood. But dear friend, you are not just your illness. You are also the stories you haven't told yet, the songs you used to hum, the spark in your eye when you recall a cherished memory, and a whole life of wisdom and humor that no one else can replicate. When every conversation becomes a health report, we risk hiding the most beautiful parts of ourselves, the part that still smiles, still observes, still feels deeply. So try starting a conversation with something different, something that caught your attention yesterday, a thought you had this morning, a curious feeling that made you pause. And you may notice their eyes soften, and you on too will feel a bit more whole, not just as someone managing a condition, but as someone fully alive, with stories and spirit still intact. If something just came to mind that made you smile, don't hesitate to share it in the comments. Sometimes a gentle memory is all it takes to remind us that we are still here, and there's still so much worth telling. Let's continue, then, with something else that may seem harmless, but could quietly drive a wedge between us and the people who care, simply because we don't notice how we're speaking. There are moments when we don't mean to, but the words we say make others feel like they're being judged. We've lived long enough to know that what's right isn't always easy, and what's easy isn't always right. The values, the lessons, the principles we've gathered over a lifetime, they weren't learned overnight, and not everyone will understand them the way we do. But sometimes, precisely because we've been through so much, we forget that the next generation has their own path to walk, their own falls to take, their own strength to discover. We speak because we care. We offer advice because we worry. But when it comes out as, "That's not the right way," or "You should be doing it like this," even the best of intentions can leave the listener feeling unseen. Young people don't need us to agree with every choice they make. What they deeply need is to feel heard without being interrupted, without being corrected before they've even finished speaking. The generational gap will always be there, but how we choose to respond to that gap is what determines whether we stay close or slowly drift apart. A father, a mother, a grandfather, when they can sit in silence and simply say, "I can see how hard you're trying," it often means more than a list of instructions ever could. Because more than a roadmap, what people need to keep going is the quiet reassurance that someone believes they'll find their way. If you've ever felt confused by the choices your children or grandchildren make, that's perfectly normal. But instead of jumping in to correct them, try asking, what made you choose that path? A simple question like that might become the bridge to a real, heartfelt conversation. If you've ever learned to step back and truly listen, feel free to share that experience in the comments below. And if this feels worth reflecting on, let's gently move forward to something else. A habit that may seem small, but can quietly make others uncomfortable without us even realizing it. There are times when we stop paying attention to the simple things: brushing our hair, changing into fresh clothes, washing our face in the morning. It starts to feel unnecessary. Aging brings many shifts, not just in the body, but also in how we see ourselves. Fatigue settles in more often, and on quiet mornings, when no one is expected to visit, it can feel easier to stay still, to let those little routines fade away. We may tell ourselves, no one will notice anyway. And who really cares at this point? But dear friend, the truth is, it's not that others don't notice. It's that we slowly forget that we are still worth caring for, still worthy of dignity and attention. Not because someone might stop by, but because we are still here, still living, still deserving. Keeping up with personal hygiene isn't about looking attractive. It's not about impressing anyone. It's a quiet reminder to ourselves: I am still present. I still matter. I still want to face this world with some grace, even on the simplest of days. A freshly combed head of hair, a clean shirt, fresh breath. These are small things, but they can make others feel more comfortable around us. And more importantly, they help us feel more at ease in our own skin. No matter your age, we all want to feel respected, not just by others, but by the face we see in the mirror each morning. There's nothing small about a habit that protects your self-worth, and no age is too late to begin caring for yourself again, gently, without pressure, but with love. If you've ever had a day where you let it all go and quietly told yourself, tomorrow, I'll try just a little more, you're not alone. You're welcome to share your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes a soft reminder is all it takes to start again, one small step at a time. And when we begin to treat ourselves with kindness, we'll find it easier to reconnect with others, starting with the simple, comfortable presence we bring into the room. Let's continue, then, to something that seems harmless but can quietly hold us back in the past and keep us from fully living the present moment. For some of us, the older we get, the more we find ourselves returning to the past, and truthfully, memory is a precious thing. Those years gone by hold love, loss, hard-earned lessons, and moments we can never quite relive. Each elder is like a living book. Open it, and there are stories rich with wisdom and depth. But when our conversations revolve only around the past, repeating the same stories over and over, without touching what's happening today, the people listening may begin to feel a quiet distance. It's not that they don't value our memories. They do, but they also want to know. Are we still emotionally present? Do we still notice the world unfolding around us? Our children and grandchildren don't just want to hear about the good old days. They want to know what we think of that movie they just watched, the song they're playing on repeat, or something small that happened today. Because when we still listen to the present, when we still share our thoughts about the now, we stay alive in their world, not just as a memory, but as someone still walking alongside them. Revisiting the past helps preserve what matters, but sharing what's current, that's what keeps us connected. Sometimes all it takes is a question like, "How was your day today?" Or a simple comment, "The sky seems a little clearer this morning." Don't you think that can be enough to open a real conversation between generations? There's nothing wrong with being nostalgic, but when we live only in what once was, we risk missing all the quiet beauty still unfolding: a warm afternoon sun, a familiar glance across the room, a peaceful moment spent sitting quietly with someone we love. Dear friend, do you still have a small daily ritual, something that makes you feel alive? Right here, in this present moment, not just surviving, but truly living. If you do, I invite you to share it in the comments, because something small you're holding on to today might be exactly what someone else needs to open their heart again. And if you're ready, let's take a gentle step forward to something that may not feel intentional, but can quietly leave younger people feeling dismissed, especially if we aren't sensitive enough to notice it. There are times when we say, "Kids these days are so different," without realizing that this one simple line can quietly push someone away. The older we get, the easier it becomes to notice the gap between ourselves and the younger generation, not just in how they dress, speak, or use technology, but in how they think, how they love, and how they face life. And when we don't understand something, our instinct often turns to judgment. We compare it to the way we were raised, to the values we were taught. We assume they give up too easily, lack patience, or don't appreciate the things we once held dear. But my friend, take a moment and think back. Weren't we once on the receiving end of that same criticism? Didn't we hear things like, "Your generation moves too fast," or "That music is just noise"? Maybe the difference in young people today isn't because they've forgotten where they came from, but because they're growing up in a world that moves faster, feels heavier, and demands a different kind of strength. And what they need from us isn't constant praise, but quiet faith. A simple nod when they're trying. A soft word like, "I think you're doing a good job." Sometimes that means more than any lecture could. When we learn to pause before offering a harsh opinion, and instead offer understanding, we begin building a bridge, a path that allows them to walk toward us, and us toward them, without judgment in between. Every young person is learning how to become the best version of themselves, just as we once did. What they need is to be seen through eyes of patience, not the lens of comparison. If you've ever looked at a grandchild and thought, "They're nothing like we used to be," pause for a moment and ask what excites them right now. You might be surprised by the beautiful things growing quietly inside them. Have you ever changed the way you saw a young person and felt closer to them because of it? If so, I invite you to share that story in the comments. It might inspire someone else who's trying to understand the younger generation. And once we begin to see the good in our differences, we're ready to take the next step toward another habit that, though small, can quietly damage trust if we don't handle it with care. Sometimes, out of love, we cross a line without even realizing it. We've lived through years filled with responsibility, always watching over our children, checking in, worrying whether they were on the right path. But at a certain stage in life, perhaps the greatest gift we can offer them isn't more advice, but trust. The line between caring and controlling is a very thin one. Even a well-meaning comment, if offered at the wrong time or worse, shared with someone else instead of the person involved, can quietly damage a once close relationship. Young people, whether they're our kids, grandkids, or neighbors, want to feel like their lives are their own. Yes, they still need us, but not always for direction. More often, they just need to be heard. They need a calm, quiet presence they can lean on when life gets heavy, not a hand always trying to steer them. And above all, what keeps a relationship strong over time isn't how much we say, but how much we're trusted. As elders, when we know how to step back, stay quiet, and respect someone's personal space, we become a safe place. A place where others don't feel watched or judged. A place where they don't have to wonder, if I open up, will they go and tell someone else silence isn't indifference? Sometimes it's the most powerful expression of love. It's a quiet way of saying, I'm here if you need me, and if not, I trust you to make your own way. If you've ever realized you stepped too far into someone's life and felt a bit of sadness afterward, please know that doesn't make you weak. It makes you aware, and that awareness is something to be proud of. If you'd like to share that realization in the comments, you're more than welcome. Sometimes one honest reflection can help others take their own step back with a little more peace. And when we learn to step back at the right time, we give the relationship room to grow again. Now, let's move gently into the next habit, one that may seem small, but if we don't work on it, can quietly leave us behind as the world continues to change. There are things today that can make us feel like we've landed on a different planet. Technology, smartphones, apps filled with strange icons and buttons that don't make much sense. And so, instead of trying to figure them out, we step aside. We watch in silence, then slowly give up on trying at all. I understand that feeling. The mind doesn't feel as quick as it used to. There's a fear of doing it wrong, a fear of being laughed at, a fear that we simply won't be able to understand what the younger folks seem to do in seconds. But dear friend, resisting something new isn't just saying no to learning. It's quietly closing the door to connection with the world that continues to move around us. When we choose not to explore the things our loved ones use every day, we unintentionally place ourselves further from their lives, further from their conversations, further from the joy of feeling included. No one expects us to master everything. But when we're willing to try, even if it's just learning how to open a message, view a photo, or make a video call with our grandchildren, we're saying something meaningful. I still want to be present in your life in the way you live it now. Learning something new isn't about keeping up with the world. It's about showing we still want to walk alongside it, that we still want to understand, to listen, and to remain part of what matters even in the smallest ways. And let's not forget, learning is one of the best ways to keep the mind fresh. Like opening a window in the morning, letting fresh air sweep in, bringing light to corners we've left untouched. We're not just picking up a skill, we're practicing adaptability, patience, and humility. 3 things that keep the spirit young longer than any medicine ever could. If you've ever felt unsure in front of a new phone or TV setting, remember you are not alone. Every one of us was new to something, once. And if you've already taken a small step, even just one, I invite you to share how that felt in the comments. Your story may be just the encouragement someone else needs to begin. Because in the end, every small effort carries hope. And when we're willing to open up to something new, we just might find ourselves ready for something deeper still, something that often lives quietly in the minds of older adults, without us realizing how much it's shaping our relationships. There are times in life when we suddenly feel like we're standing on the sidelines, no longer the center of anyone's world. Phone calls come less often, family dinners grow rare, and quietly, in the back of our mind, a question begins to echo. Do I still matter to anyone? If you felt that before, then you're no stranger to loneliness. Growing older, even with loved ones nearby, can sometimes feel like being quietly forgotten. And when that sadness lingers, it becomes easy to slip into a familiar place believing we've been left behind. We begin to tell ourselves and others, everyone's just too busy now, or no one really wants to be around me anymore. And slowly, those thoughts build up like a fog, blocking the very doors that could lead us back to connection. But my dear friend, here's something gentle I want to remind you of. Staying connected isn't just for the young. It's a choice for anyone who is still alive and still willing to open their heart. Yes, it's hard to take the first step when you feel overlooked, but if we're always waiting for someone else to reach out first, there may come a day when no one does. Yet if we dare to go first with just a simple message, a warm hello, or even a cup of tea offered to a neighbor, then we're reopening a door we might have unknowingly closed. Choosing to stop playing the victim isn't about pride, it's about love. It means we still want to live near others, not just sit alone with old hurts. And yes, there may be moments when your invitation goes unanswered, but that doesn't make you small. In fact, it shows great strength. Because the one who reaches out first is often the one who carries the most peace within. If you've ever taken that first step, reached out to someone after a long silence, I invite you to share how it felt in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And now, as we begin to let go of that old feeling of being left behind and step back into the role of someone who offers love, we're ready to move on to something even more delicate, especially when we start thinking about what it means to give. There's something we don't often talk about, but it quietly lingers in many family relationships, that unspoken feeling of debt between loved ones. As we grow older, it's natural to want to help our children or grandchildren financially, sometimes out of love, sometimes out of worry, and sometimes just because we want them to live a little more comfortably. But here's something to remember: how we give can shape how that help is received. When money comes with conditions, it stops feeling like a gift. It becomes something else, a tool that quietly makes the other person feel indebted, even if they never say it out loud. Phrases like, "I gave you this, so you should do that," may sound reasonable on the surface, but they can turn genuine gratitude into quiet pressure over time. And the real danger, when love becomes entangled with control, even in subtle ways, the bond between generations begins to weaken. Visits feel more like obligations, smiles start to feel forced, and eventually silence becomes the safest path just to avoid conflict altogether. Dear friend, what your children and grandchildren need most from you isn't your money. It's the feeling that they are accepted, trusted, and allowed to grow into themselves without an invisible price tag attached. If we're able to give, let us do so with kindness, without strings, without expectations. And if we find ourselves still waiting for something in return, maybe it's time to pause, listen inward, and ask gently, do I really need that in exchange? Because when love runs deep enough, it no longer demands, it simply offers, it trusts, and it lets go so that those we love can stand tall, without feeling weighed down by guilt or duty. If you've ever found yourself in this situation, whether as the giver or the receiver, I invite you to share how it felt in the comments. Sometimes, a quiet truth can help someone else see something they hadn't noticed before. And when we truly understand that giving isn't about getting something back, but about keeping our own heart light, then we're ready to move forward to a lesson just as important: how to feel close to others without carrying the weight of everything on our own. Sometimes just one sentence, "I can handle it myself," is enough to make someone stop offering altogether. We grew up with pride in our independence, a life built by our own hands, years spent providing, fixing, enduring without complaint, without asking for anything in return. And even now, many of us still cling to that habit, to do it ourselves, to not be a burden, to need no one. But my dear friend, there's something worth revisiting here. Refusing help doesn't always mean strength. Sometimes it's the very thing that gently pushes people away. Younger folks, our children, grandchildren, neighbors may not always say it aloud, but they want to show up in our lives. A hand offered to carry groceries, a ride to the doctor's office, a blanket gently folded at our feet. These are their ways of saying, "I care about you," When we turn down help too often, we don't just reject the act, we reject the feeling behind it. Accepting help doesn't make us weak. It's a quiet way of saying, I still belong here. I'm still part of the circle of connection. Being alive means still needing others, not out of dependence, but because all of us, at every age, need to feel useful and need to feel close. I've seen older friends try to carry it all alone, not because they had to, but because they were afraid of being a burden, and in doing so, they unknowingly made it harder for others to come close. So if someone asks, "Can I help with that?" don't be too quick to say no. By saying yes, you're giving them a chance to care. You're choosing to stay open, rather than closing yourself off. If you've ever let go of that fear and allowed yourself to receive help with peace, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Your story may be the gentle encouragement someone else needs to take that step too. And once we learn how to let others in, even in the smallest ways, we find it easier to reach back out. With something as simple as a smile, a lighthearted comment, or even a laugh at ourselves. Let's continue now to something equally important, especially as we grow older, holding on to a little sunshine in the soul. Even on the cloudiest days, there are days when everything around us feels heavy, and even inside ourselves, there's little room left for laughter. Getting older brings a flood of change. Our bodies slow down, memories fade, loved ones leave, one by one. And the longer we live, the more we realize life isn't quite as simple as it once was. Somewhere along that quiet rhythm of aging, the playfulness that used to come so naturally begins to slip away. But dear friend, it's often in the hardest seasons that laughter can work its quiet magic. It doesn't have to be a big, loud laugh. Sometimes just a gentle comment, a knowing smile, or a light-hearted way of seeing the world can make someone feel a little lighter in our presence. Holding on to even a small spark of humor, a little wit, a bit of mischief isn't about pretending we aren't hurting. It's about reminding ourselves that we haven't lost our inner light, that we can still bring comfort to others, still turn an awkward moment into a warm memory, with just the right words at the right time. And the strange beauty is this: when we make someone else laugh, our own heart lifts a little too. Weariness takes a step back. Old wounds soften. True humor, the kind that comes from experience, is never shallow. It's a quiet form of kindness, a way of reaching someone's heart without lectures, without long explanations. No one expects us to be cheerful all the time, but an elder who can still smile through hardship, still tell a story that makes others chuckle, that is a rare and precious gift. If you've ever managed to hold on to your sense of humor through a difficult season, I invite you to share a little moment, a memory, a joke, or something that made you smile recently. Because sometimes a story that seems ordinary is exactly what someone else needs to feel a little lighter. And once we've found that bit of laughter again, we're ready to move on to the final habit, one that's often mistaken for love, but if handled without care, can feel more like pressure than support. There are moments when all we want is to help by saying what we believe is right, because we've been there, we've lived through it, and deep down, we just want our children and grandchildren to avoid the same mistakes we once made. But dear friend, no matter how well-intentioned our advice may be, if it comes at the wrong time or in the wrong way, it can quietly become a wall that separates us. You see, the younger ones, even when they're still figuring things out, need space to feel, to stumble, to find their own path. And what they want from us isn't always a solution. Sometimes what they truly need is simply the quiet presence of someone who understands, someone who doesn't rush to judge, who doesn't place their own beliefs over another person's choices. Perhaps you felt it too, those times when all you wanted was to share your thoughts, but the other person quickly started fixing. When all you needed was a nod of empathy, but instead, you got a list of what to change. Even something that small can be enough to make someone pull away. That's why, instead of jumping in with advice, sometimes it's more powerful to stay a little longer in the role of a listener. A listener who may speak only a few words, but each word carries real compassion. Something as simple as, I imagine, that must be really hard. One sentence, no opinions, just presence, just kindness. Advice when asked for? can be a true gift. But advice that arrives uninvited again and again can start to feel like a quiet burden. And over time, that weight may cause someone to stop opening up. Not because they don't care about us, but because they're afraid of being corrected or judged when all they needed was to be heard. I believe that you, with all your lived wisdom, have the grace to listen, to understand, to sense when to speak and when to simply sit in silence. That's not just a skill, that's a quiet beauty of aging when we've learned that sometimes saying nothing at all is the most loving thing we can do. If you've ever listened to someone without stepping in to fix them and that moment brought you closer, I invite you to share that story in the comments. Because often, it's the moments we stayed silent that people remember most fondly. And now, my friend, as we reach the end of this gentle reflection, we can finally exhale, not because we become perfect, but because we've been brave enough to look inward with honesty and with peace. Dear friend, after all these years of living, we come to understand that no one is perfect, not even ourselves. Each of us carries a personal journey, filled with joy, heartache, and quiet habits shaped by time. Not everyone knows how to speak up about what hurts them, and sometimes the distance in a relationship doesn't come from anything dramatic, but from a fleeting glance, an unintentional word, or the quiet feeling of no longer being heard like before. But the most beautiful truth is this: we still have a chance to make things better. A small shift in how we speak, a little more listening, one moment of silence when it matters can soften what once felt broken. You don't need to start over. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to choose one thing, one small habit you're ready to look at more closely, and begin from there. Slowly, with sincerity. If this video stirred something in you, I warmly invite you to share it in the comments. What you've just realized might be the very thing someone else needs to hear today. And if you feel today's message has brought even a small sense of comfort, please don't hesitate to send this video to someone you care about. Sometimes, one timely sentence can become a bridge, reconnecting what's been slowly fading. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I hope to see you again soon in another quiet moment, where we'll continue this conversation like old friends, still listening to each other with gentleness and respect.